Welcome to Global Citizen Life podcast. Thank you very much for joining us. Today on the show, we have Rick Slane. Welcome, Rick. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
So, Rick, you are in beautiful Spain and you're living in Valencia. So, kind of two questions or one question with two parts.
Sure.
Why did you choose Spain? And then more specifically, out of all the beautiful areas and cities in Spain, why did you choose Valencia?
Sure. So a few years ago, I started thinking about my retirement and what that would look like, where I might want to be. So actually, I'm an engineer by trade, software engineer, and then technical architect. So of course, I'm going to research the heck out of everything. Um, I started looking at various places like South America
Mhm.
was possible, but I felt that although there are different countries, they have somewhat of a similar origin, except for maybe Argentina. They have somewhat of similar, similar, not the same, but similar culture and origin. And so I didn't feel there would be enough differentiation. Southeast Asia was on the list, but the weather there, I don't do heat and humidity very well. And that's constant heat and humidity there. So I knew that wasn't going to work. Some of my criteria that I looked for were access to travel, cost of living, quality of lifestyle and culture. Um, so, these are some things that I was looking at. Portugal was on the list, so I did visit Lisbon as well. And at least my impression, and I wasn't there very long, but my impression was that Portugal, the standard of living is a little bit lower than Spain. My understanding is it's a little bit more of it's a poorer country than Spain. Not to say that it's poor, just it's a little bit less than Spain. And so I kind of zeroed in on Spain. I visited Spain several times. I've been up to the Formula One race in Barcelona a
Nice.
couple of times. And Barcelona it's a huge city, and I've had the opportunity to travel to many different countries. I think I got about 35 to 40 under my belt, and I found that the larger cities in most countries around the world tend to be kind of ubiquitous. They kind of blend together. Um, so it wasn't for me. Madrid is a business capital. Valencia checked a lot of boxes. It's a great gateway to the rest of Europe. It's coastal. Now, July and August here can get a little bit oppressive with the heat and humidity. And a lot of Valencianos actually leave Valencia in July and August. But that's a couple of months, and otherwise it's beautiful here. The cost of living is great. The medical care is good. Easy access to travel. It's right on there's a port and a very nice marina, a lot of beaches. So that's how I chose Valencia.
Well, Valencia is a beautiful city. My first trip to Spain was Barcelona,
Mhm.
and I loved it and stayed. Not exactly like from there. I left and then went back to Barcelona. And I was probably there for probably a couple years before I
Right.
actually made it down to Valencia. And after I did, I've said to many people, if I would have went to Valencia first, I'm not sure I would have moved to Barcelona.
Fair enough.
There's some pros and cons to both. Like Valencia, I find like the green spaces, the big park, all of that is really nice. Barcelona has parks, but they're not green parks. Like they have trees, but a lot of them are dirt. It's not, there's not
Yeah.
a lot of grass.
Yeah. And I'm
Um,
live one block from the Turia.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. It's great. And so, but then I heard too that the co-working space, and we're going back several years now, co-working
Right.
spaces in Valencia weren't nearly as popular as they were in Barcelona. Barcelona's got tons of co-working spaces. So
Right.
it does kind of come down to what a person needs. But I think Valencia is I've had friends that are living there, and it is a beautiful city.
And an update on the co-working space. There's a lot of them now in Valencia. In fact, there's one 2 blocks from me.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of them. And for those, I referenced the Turia, for your audience that they may be interested. Valencia, the central Valencia is kind of shaped like a diamond. And the Turia was an old riverbed up across the top 2 parts. So it's like third base to second base to first base. That's an old riverbed. It flooded Valencia City a couple of times, and so they diverted the river to the south, and turned that old riverbed into a park, several
Mm.
kilometers long, several different parts of it. There's a football area for football camps. There's a music palace there now. There's workout stations along the way as you're walking. There's jogging trails. And I think this gives an idea of what Valencia is like in terms of the people versus the government. The government wanted to turn that into a multi-lane highway around the top of Valencia. The people said,
Oh,
no, we want it to be a park. And it's a park.
park. It's a beautiful park too. I love it. If I lived there, I would be out jogging and walking there every single day. I think it's beautiful. And that's the thing that Barcelona doesn't have something like that.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and for Valencia, typically you have dinner about 10:30, and it's the lighter meal of the day. It's not the heavy meal.
Hmm.
But imagine even being a woman out exploring the city on her own, walking around the city, including the little side streets, tertiary roads, almost like alleys, at 1 o'clock in the morning and feeling completely safe.
Hmm.
And
Very
that's what life
important.
in Valencia is like.
Hmm. Although the whole Spain eating at 10:30, that's for me, that's a tough one. I don't like to eat that late. Now, if I am going out with friends, I usually have something light, probably around 7-ish.
Right.
Just for a little because that's usually when I eat. I don't generally like to eat after 8 o'clock. But then if I go with friends and we do eat, as you said though, it is quite light. So we'll share some tapas and some wine, and then the common thing after eating is you go for a walk. And I
Right.
love that part because then it's not just it's not heavy food that's sitting in the stomach and you go for a walk, you're out for a bit. So even though they do eat quite late, it is nice that it's a light meal and lunch is kind of the biggest meal of the day.
Right, right. And along those lines, pro tip is paella is for lunch, not for the later meal.
Right. Yeah. And paella is amazing. Valencia
Valencia
has
is
some
the
of the
home of
best
paella, so they
paella
claim.
places.
Yeah,
So, Rick, earlier you were saying we were chatting just a couple minutes before we started recording that you had brought your vehicle there from the US. So, kind of walk us through the process and everything it took to do that, to get it there. And for some people it may be worth doing, and for others it may not, because obviously there's time and expenses and things involved with us. So just kind of tell everybody your experience with doing that.
sure. So in general, I would say don't. However, in my particular instance, this car is worth about 20,000 euros more, 20 to 25 more in Spain than it is back in the US. And so when I did the quick math of what's it going to cost me to bring the car over and have it registered here, the math made sense. And it was pretty close. It cost me in total about 8 to 9,000 euros to bring it over from Spain. That includes cost of driving it from, I drove it from Denver down to Houston, delivered it to the shipper. It went on, and I did an enclosed by itself. So it went on a boat, came over, was delivered here. Now, once it arrives here, then you've got various things you have to do. One of them is before it arrives, you want to get a document called Baja Consular, which is from the US consulate here that says you have officially changed residency, you now live here, right? If you bring it in within a certain time period, and I honestly I don't remember if it's within 6 months or 1 year, goods that you bring in during a change of residency are not taxed for a certain period of time. And so that avoids the import duties, which would be significant for this car. Now, once it's here, then you have 60 days to submit the initial registration request. Within that 60 days, whatever technical modifications will be required have to be done. That'll include, it may be changing out the headlights entirely. No, I'm sorry, the tail lights entirely because they don't use amber for the turn signals. And likewise for the what are called vehicle position in the front, you cannot have amber. In my car, I had amber. So we had to figure out how to get around that fog lamp. So there are some technical details that have to be modified in the car. You have to identify someone to do that, and then get it through the technical inspection, and then submit the registration request. So, and anytime you're dealing with the Spanish government, plan on it taking at least twice as long as they say it will.
Yes, things definitely with Spanish government and several other governments around the world that things just don't go as quickly as they claim or we think that it's going to be.
Right.
And that's same thing with residency and things like that as well.
Mhm.
Um, my initial residency, I think they said it was just supposed to be a few months.
Yeah,
And I think it took about 9 months.
yeah,
It was substantially longer. But the thing with that though, at least once that paperwork is in and is in process, because as from North America, we're only allowed 90 out of every 180 days.
right.
But just so for people listening, that once that paperwork is in the system and in process, then you can stay. So that's when I say to people, I was legally illegal because I was over my 90 days, but I was legally allowed to stay. So, and yeah, and it definitely is having patience.
Well, and
And
I would suggest anyone that is going to be running through the Spanish bureaucracy somewhat. There the service is called Gestores here, which are
mm,
native Spanish speakers who know the system somewhat,
yeah.
and can assist you in shepherding the paperwork through. A couple of examples. I have one, another one again with the vehicle was they were once the registration had been completed, they were sending it to me at my home address. Well, apparently something on the submission had not been entered quite correctly. And so the Spanish government was saying, well, we didn't have your full address in Valencia. We knew Valencia, but we wouldn't have the full address. And so it was literally sitting somewhere, not sure where, somewhere in Valencia with no ability to get to me, and no one was tracking it. And so my guest star
Oh.
actually went down with me to the city government, local city government. They were able to look up the registration, uh, the application, and said, "Oh yeah, well here's I don't know why, but," and then I walked out with the correct form. They printed it up right there.
Oh, well, that's good that they did it
So,
right there. So
well,
you
having
had it.
someone, having a service person, the guest store or
Yeah.
a service agency that can do those kinds of things, I think has made it a little bit smoother because I'll just say I would have gotten a little frustrated.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I bet. And two, in some instances, they can get appointments. It's like they have, I don't know, like a side door or something into systems where they get priority or something. I don't know, to get appointments for things that if we just go online and you can be told for things that you need an appointment, just go online and make an appointment. Sometimes there's never appointments available. But if you have somebody locally, that guest store who can do that, they have a place and they can go and they, oh yeah, you've got an appointment next week for this
Right.
time. It's just
So
the way it
I
works.
highly recommend it for those first coming over. Um, that's an area of brain damage and frustration that you don't need when you first get to Spain. It's worth it.
It definitely is. The time and frustration definitely it just makes things smoother. And you're moving abroad. You're already dealing with everything is different. The language is different. How things work is different.
Mhm.
Um, adjusting to siesta time when you think you're going to go to the bank in the afternoon, and every time you go, it's closed because it's the middle of the afternoon.
And and my dog who's here now enjoying siesta have certainly learned to appreciate siesta.
Yeah, especially in those hot summer months.
Oh yeah.
I remember being out, yeah, probably, July or August or something, with a friend there. And she said to me, she said, "You see all these people?" And I said, "Yeah, it's busy. It's high season." She said, "Yeah, they're all tourists." I'm like, "How do you
Mhm.
know they can't all be tourists?"
Yeah.
She said, "They're all tourists because every Spanish person right now is at home because it's hot and it's the middle of the afternoon and they're at home, they're having lunch, they're having a nap. Like all these people out on the street are all tourists."
Yeah, that's true. And there are a lot of Valencians that for the summer. July and August, they get out of Valencia.
Yeah.
They go up to the mountains or go to other cities. But yeah.
Hmm. That's the same with Barcelona. And for about, I'm assuming Valencia is probably the same. I think it's about 3 weeks long in August,
Mhm.
where a lot of shops and restaurants and things that are locally owned by the Spanish people will close. And when I tell friends that, sometimes they think I'm crazy that a restaurant is going to close for 3 weeks in August of all times. And I say it does. That's their time off. That's their holiday. They're going on vacation. And as you said, to the mountains where or somewhere else where it's cooler or traveling. And they just close their shops and stores and restaurants for 3 weeks for holidays.
And I think that's one of the things that attracted me to Spain was that lifestyle of um, they're they're not as much driven by money
Yeah.
as the U.S. culture is, and they're driven by their enjoyment of life, and they tend to live more in the moment. On one of my first trips to Valencia, I think it was my first trip, my second evening in Valencia, I was out just strolling. And it's in November. It was misting just a little bit, and there was a table of late 20 somethings, I would guess, five or
Mhm.
six of them under an awning at an outdoor cafe, and they were all talking to each other. No one had their phone out.
Yeah.
So people truly live in the moment. They're less concerned about what might happen in the future, what has happened in the past. They live in the moment.
Yeah, I like that. And I just love the outdoor lifestyle. I
Yeah.
mean, it gets cold in the winter. It gets quite cool. I'm from Canada, so it's not Canada cold by any means, the minus 20s and 30s. But Barcelona, it's humid. Valencia is humid as well. And so when that temperature does drop with the humidity, it still feels fairly cold. And you'll see people winter jackets on. They have blankets on the seats with to wrap around. They've got the heaters, and people still eat and drink and socialize and sit outside even if they're not smokers. Because,
Mhm.
in North America, it's all the smokers have to be outside, but they just enjoy being outside and sitting outside all year round.
Sitting with friends is one of the big things. Sitting with friends, having good conversations, laughing, and enjoying life.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is good. So what have you found comparably with like the cost of living of kind of day-to-day things like your groceries, uh, gas
Right.
if you buy fuel, utilities, like compared to what you were spending in the US.
Sure. So utilities are actually not that far off.
Mhm.
I was expecting electricity to be significantly higher, and the cost per kilowatt hour is higher, but it's not that much higher. So that was a pleasant surprise. Gasoline, if you do choose to either bring over or buy a car here, gasoline is about 2.5 to 3 times the cost,
Wow.
which is one of the reasons why they tend to have smaller engines here, et cetera.
Mm.
So, but let's talk about some of the other things. My zero deductible healthcare plan, which is required, by the way, when you apply for the visa, my
Hmm.
zero deductible healthcare plan for me at my age, now 64 years old, is about $1,600 a year. So less than a buck and a half a month, but call it a buck and a quarter, buck
Hmm.
30, where that would be about 600 a month with a high deductible in the US.
That's a huge difference.
You're right. My internet is $20 a month and that's
That's
for Gig E fiber.
hmm
And it's also symmetrical, which is so it's Gig E down as well as Gig E up. So for those of us who are technologists, if you're trying to stream something out of your house, that's a big bonus.
right.
Um, my
And
cell
there's lots of
phone
streaming
is
going on with like the internet and Netflix and movies and all kinds of stuff. So,
well, and I've got a movie server sitting here in my apartment, and because I've got that Gig E going up, that means I can stream off my movie server to wherever I happen to be in the world.
oh wow. Okay.
So that's kind of cool.
Hmm.
My mobile phone is, I think it's like $15 a month for unlimited. So, some of those expenses are significantly lower. I'm in an area called Le Chample, which is a bit of an upscale mixed retail and residential and business area. and probably paying a little bit more than I thought I was going to, but also I've noticed because I've been tracking over the last 4 or 5 years, I would say prices have gone up between 60 and 80% over the course of that 4 to 5 years because Valencia consistently ranks in those top places to retire lists. Forbes, Condé
Mm.
Nast, several of them. Valencia is always in the top five. Oftentimes it's in the top three.
Which then obviously that and inflation have
Right.
made it go up. But again, it's still substantially cheaper than what you
Substantially
were
cheaper.
paying in the US. And I say that to people sometimes too. They'll if they're looking like we can't always compare everything exactly when we're moving, right? Like if you look at taxes, rent, things like one place will be more of something, one will be more. And they say, but you have to look at kind of the overall, like what you're paying for rent, what you're going to pay for taxes, what are you getting for those taxes that you're paying? And then, of course, your own cost of living. You could say, I pay X amount in groceries. Well, our grocery bills are going to be different because who knows? Maybe somebody eats meat, somebody's vegetarian, somebody has organic, somebody has something, somebody loves going to the markets, somebody prefers the grocery store because it's convenient. So those vary. But when we look at our own kind of personal things and we think, okay, my total monthly expenses in North America compared to Spain, France, Italy, wherever somebody may be thinking of going and they're doing all those price comparisons. You kind of have to look at the total, not just one thing, because I know sometimes taxes people think about, they're like, oh, well, the tax rate is this much and I'm paying this. And the
Right.
rate could be a bit more, but it's then I say, what about healthcare? And just as you said, that's a huge difference. So even if you were technically paying a little bit more for taxes, but your healthcare is so much less, you're still paying less overall.
Yeah, and another example is there's a big thing here called Menu del Dia, right? So
Ah, yes.
typically about 1:30 is when it starts, right? So you
Mm,
go from Menu del Dia, and you can find a lot of places that are between 8.50 and 10 euros. And that includes two courses, so a starter course, a main course, and a beverage. Oh, a
yeah,
beverage and then a small dessert.
yeah,
And by the way, there's no 30% add-on like there would be in the US for tip and tax.
right, right. And it's a lot of food. Like I'm very
Oh, yeah.
full when I have that menu of the day. And as you said, even if you went for a really found a fancy expensive one for 15 euro,
Right.
I'm in Nashville right at this moment. I was out the other day for a glass of wine. One glass of wine, it was a 9 ounce glass of wine, cost me 30 US dollars.
It's funny you mentioned the wine. I remember my first trip. I think it was the second or third night. I went to a fairly nice restaurant, sit down, white tablecloths, the whole 9 yards, right? And I ordered what I thought was a glass of wine. It was a nice Rioja, like maybe
Okay.
12 euros.
Yeah.
And the gentleman came over and said, "Sir, that's the bottle." So a glass
Yeah.
was like 2.50, 3 euros.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so different. And it's good quality. Like I don't even like buying a bottle of wine here, even from the liquor store, the grocery store, because
Mhm.
I just look and I think, when I'm in Spain, I know what I pay for this.
Yeah,
And
when
it's
if I were to put a percentage to it, given a similar sized city, so Denver City, where I came from, is
Mhm.
similar in population to Valencia. It's close enough. So if
Mhm.
I were to compare the two and where I'm living here in Valencia, so similar lifestyle is
Yeah.
probably about 40 to 50% less in Valencia than in Denver.
Wow. And I mean, it could probably even be a little bit less because Valencia is a very walkable city. In lots
Oh,
of places in
absolutely.
Spain, you could easily live in Spain without a car and the
Right.
cost of that. And so that for a lot of people could reduce. Like I don't have a car in Europe. And
Right.
and I love that. I love traveling. I travel a ton. And just
Mhm.
between the trains that they have that go everywhere, the metro system that's very popular. I know I've taken the bus here in Nashville a few times. People are like, you're taking the bus? And coming from Europe, I'm like, I take the bus. I walk places. I love walking. And we really have that lifestyle over there that's not really a North American thing to do. And I mean, I walk everywhere, I take the bus or the bicycle sharing as well. They call
Right.
it bising in Barcelona. I'm not sure what it's called in Valencia.
Valencia, BC also. Yeah, so it's Valencia,
Okay.
BC. The metros here, the buses here are great. The buses here, you buy like the 10 pass one, ends up being I
Hmm.
think like 60 or 70 cents per
Yeah.
ride, no matter where you go. So that's that's really convenient. I live in as I mentioned, it's a little bit more of a kind of an upscale area, a little more shishi area, and so I'm paying a little bit more rent than some other people are now. One of
Hmm.
the reasons I went here was because I have a dog, brought my dog with me, and the Turia is a block away from me. So every day we go walking through the Turia. El Corte
Hmm.
Inglés, which is where you get everything if you can't find it anywhere else. El Corte
Right.
Inglés is about a 7 or 8 story building that literally has everything from hardware to pet supplies to anything, right?
Yeah.
Major appliances, small kitchen appliances, they have everything. Anyway, I'm about 10-12 minute walk away from El Corte Inglés. Mercat Central. I'm probably about
Hmm.
15-minute walk away from that, about the same to Mercat de Rusafa. So all these markets where you can get the fresh fruits and vegetables. You'll also find a little bit less in this area because it used to be, well, it's still kind of a big business area, but in some of the other areas on the little side streets, you'll find the fruterias y verduras, where you can get the fresh fruits and vegetables in these little tiny shops there, maybe 8 to 10 feet wide. And then
Hmm.
they
And
go
that's
back
all
a
they
little.
have. That's
Yeah.
it. They have just those fruits and vegetables.
Right. And then going through the seasons of what the fresh fruits and vegetables are. Earlier in the
Hmm.
year it was cherry season, and then now it's fig season. Pretty soon it'll be orange juice, orange season. And I highly recommend for those who decide to visit Valencia, there's a drink called Agua de Valencia. Just
Hmm.
don't plan on doing anything for the rest of the afternoon.
Okay. I have not had that, but note, I will make a note of that.
Do you mind me putting in plug for one little place? I don't have no association, no financial
Of
ties to it.
course. No,
The
absolutely.
quintessential place to get agua de Valencia is Cafe de las Horas, which is
Cafe de
right
las
around the
Horas.
Plaza de la Virgen.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's the best there.
That is the best place to get it. Yep.
Okay. And are you going to be having more than one?
If you can have two of them, you're a bigger person than I am. So and
Okay.
and and still walk out.
And still, right.
It's a combination of gin, vodka, cava, which is their version of champagne, and then the
Hmm.
Valencian orange juice, which is it's a very different flavor than American
Wow.
orange juice. It's much more acidic,
Hmm.
and you don't taste the alcohol at all.
Oh, so it's like juice with a kick, a big kick.
A big kick. Yeah,
Well, that's good to know, and I will definitely have to though give it a try when I get down to Valencia.
sure.
So if somebody was kind of on the fence about moving to Spain or even specifically to Valencia, what would be a couple piece of advice that you would give them in kind of preparing for that move abroad? It's their first time, and the first time we always have some concerns and
Mhm.
worries.
Um, I think one of the things is think about what's important to you, what brings you joy. And if you're looking at, so for instance, I went through the retirement process, retirement visa, and that was something that I had to really consider is, okay, I've got all this time on my hands, and it's really unhealthy to do little or nothing. So you
Right.
have to think about what activities do I want to participate in. And for me, one of them was travel. I've actually gotten back into one of my hobbies, astrophotography. There's a really good astronomy group here, which has a good dark sky site, a little ways away from here. So you have to think about what it is that you want to do, and does the place that you're looking at have those available? There is a wonderful expat community here. So very supportive group of people. People have been here for quite a while and happy to answer, hey, how do I get this done? Or where's a good place for Italian or Indian food? So there's a good support system here. Um, the process isn't as daunting as it first seems. Even getting a bank account with a Spanish number is what they call an IBAN.
Mhm.
That's not that difficult. It's a great place to come over. The cost of living is great. The lifestyle and culture is fantastic. You have to appreciate having a more laid back lifestyle and culture. If you want to live in like downtown New York City, Valencia may not be the place for you. But other than that, there's now, even that said, there's a place called Plaza de Ayuntamiento, which is right where the city plaza, so the main government buildings are right there. That's pretty high energy as well. There's different neighborhoods with different feel to them. So I mean, I think if one were to start asking questions, here's what's important to me, here's the experience that I want to have. Does Valencia provide that? Um, there's plenty of people who would be able to guide you on that, as well as a lot of videos I'm sure out there that can help answer those questions for you.
Yeah, I think that's great and so true. I mean, we need to figure out what we truly enjoy doing because once we get somewhere, of course, I always say to people, the first 6 to 9 months, always fabulous. I mean, a few struggles along the way, but everything's new and it's exciting and you're there and you're figuring things out. And then after about that time, life sets in like day
Yep.
to day that the newness wears off the thing you're getting into your routine whether it's you're fine you have now a cafe you like to go to and whatever it is that you're doing you're taking your dog out for a walk several times but all that newness does eventually wear off so then once you're done kind of exploring the new and settling into life what do you like to do and what do you want to do and that's
Yeah.
super important.
Yep. And I think developing your community, I am a social
Oh,
person.
yeah.
So I'm a combination, I think they call it introverted extrovert or extroverted introvert. So I like being around people, but I like having my own time as well.
Mhm.
There's lots of ability to socially connect in various languages. My Spanish is starting to get better, so that's good.
Good.
Personally, I feel if you're going to be living someplace, you do have a responsibility to learn the local language and customs. I
Mhm.
think it's important to be able to fit into the place that you've chosen to live.
I agree completely. So, Rick, if somebody has decided that they're going to come to Valencia, and I always say check it out, put some feet on the ground,
Yeah.
get a feel for the energy, check out different neighborhoods. And if people were there, where can they connect with you or get in touch with you if they want to know a little bit more about Valencia?
You mind if I give my email address, or you want to keep that private again?
Whatever you're comfortable with, it's completely up to you.
Well, I'm in the only Rick Slan on Facebook, so it's pretty easy to find me there.
Okay,
Yeah, I'd
perfect.
be happy to
And if they're
provide
into
some.
the
I'd be happy to
photography,
answer some
that's a
questions if
great
people have
place.
it, etc. So
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much, Rick, for your time today. I really appreciate it.
great to chat with you. Have a great day.